So when we look at BMI or body mass index, that is a ratio of how much the person weighs to the height of that individual in meters squared. So it's kilograms over meters squared as the unit. We'll measure that both on as weight and height, and then convert that and give a value for BMI. So you've probably seen that before. Do you know what your current height and weight is? Okay, we'll then just take the cart down to the other room. We'll get both your height and weight with that. And so that's the first thing that we'll start with, because both of those pieces of information, specifically the height, will be utilized for BIA and for the bod. So come on, follow me down, Dr. Carrot, as we go to the other lab. And if you haven't been on campus, you're getting maybe a decent experience of what it's like to travel the first floor home. Pretty awesome. How's it going? You learned a lot? Sweet, sure. Oh man, somebody. Whoa. A little crazy, almost lost it. Okay, so as we get the camera in focus, we're going to have Anna take off her shoes, and then we'll step up onto the scale. Okay, if you've never used one of these types of slide scales, you start with the bottom one first, and you go until you have this move to the bottom, and then you can slide the top one. Try and get it right in the middle. Then you can go ahead and step with your back up against the wall to the stadiometer. Okay, take a deep breath in and look straight ahead. Okay, you can go ahead. All right, so we've got Anna at 5'6.5". Does that sound about right?
Yeah.
Awesome. Is going to be kilograms over meter squared. Let's make sure that I write up here at 65. I'm going to need this information for later. We're also going to get your weight in the bod pod too. So that's the main one that I care about. 5'6". Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was 5. It was 5'6".
Yeah.
You're right. So you think?
Good.
I don't know. You wrote with the good pen and I did the bad one. All right. So the next one that we'll do is, you want to just do the bod pod one? Is that like the one you're most excited about?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. Sweet. So we'll do the bod pod. Okay. So the hope is that we're going to be running on it through each of these different assessments, and then we can compare the body fat percentage across different modes. And so we'll take ourselves over to the bod pod. If you've never been in or around a bod pod, it looks like a space capsule that you could be launched into a Star Wars movie with. It's pretty awesome. Just a little bit. Okay, perfect. So how is it set up? We've got computer, obviously the chamber that the person would go into. The computer actually takes a decent amount of calibration to get this up and running. It takes about 40 minutes to calibrate. There are a number of quality checks that you do. You have to make sure that each of the systems are running and communicating well. And then also that what's being measured is actually accurate. And so to do that, you have to take something, this calibration cylinder, and have this known volume inside the bod pod. With this, we're trying to determine if the volume of the person that we put into this, the unknown volume, can be assessed appropriately. And so if you've ever done underwater weighing or hydrostatic weighing, it's the same type of principle. Archimedes' principle of displacement of water, or in this case, displacement of air, to determine what that volume is. So we would need to know the weight of the individual and the volume of the individual to get the body density. Once we know the body density, we can then determine what their body fat percentage, with the understanding that fat mass is less dense and non-fat or lean mass is more dense. So if you compare a pound of fat and a pound of muscle is going to be pretty small, pound of fat is going to take up a lot of volume. And so we can use that type of principle to determine what the person's body fat percentage is. If they have a greater volume that they're displacing compared to their weight, they're going to have a greater body fat percentage again. And so we are going to be using that. What you do, if you know how to read, this is a really easy assessment to do. Basically, just follow the prompts and make sure that the individual is completing prompts in the order that they come at you. So, I don't know, you haven't done this before, right? You have? Did you do it here? Okay, sweet. So you're already in the system. Was it Dr. Bunce when they went through this?
No, it's fine.
Okay, awesome. So I will
There's students out there want to come in.
Yeah, you guys
so they can see the computer.
Yep. Yeah, go on in. For sure. Okay. So if you're already in the system.
We're going to do this too.
Yeah, I was at Peg's class.
Okay.
Awesome.
Okay.
What was your birthday? 3. Just want to make sure that you're the right. I'm going to change the actual measure to 67. Yeah, so since you've already been here, already done this before, you don't have to put in all the information, but you would have to, if this was a first time individual, put in their name, their date of birth, their gender, and their height for this. And then there's also an ethnicity piece. There are a number of estimated equations based on body density to get body fat percentage. You'd want to pick the one that's the most accurate and appropriate for that client. There are a number of different ethnicity generated body fat percentage equations. But for this one, with Anna, we're going to be doing the general population. And then we would want to determine if we're wanting to measure or estimate the lung volume. The lung volume is an important piece to take into consideration because we have air that we're displacing. Air is also going to be in the lungs. We have to account for that air in the lungs so that we're not making the person seem like they're fatter because they have air trapped in the lungs. So you want to subtract that thoracic gas volume to get, again, an accurate body fat percentage. So if we wanted to do a measured one, we'd have to hook up a couple of extra pieces within the bod pod. Instead, we're going to just do the predicted one because that's what you did last time. I will just be consistent with that for us. So the predicted lung volume for on is 3.311 liters. So that's going to again be taken into consideration for the calculation. All right, so like it says here, we're going to open the bod pod door, check to make sure that it is clear, and then we will close it. Again, just reading through the prompts and hit next. So what the bod pod's doing right now is it is assessing what a cleared bod pod volume looks like. So inside the chamber, what is this like with nothing in it? The next step is going to be to put the calibration chamber or cylinder into the chamber. Once we put that into the chamber, well, can we assess that known volume? If we're accurately doing nothing with the chamber, then we can take an unknown. All right. Glad that we're having learning happening for everybody. This is great. All right, so now it says again, open up the bod pod door, place the 50.159 liter cylinder into bod pod. Thank you very much. Okay. You also, if you are running this, you want to make sure that the cylinder doesn't get damaged or dented. If it does, it's obviously not calibrated anymore because the volume inside of it has been compromised. So you do want to make sure that you don't mess with that. It's quite expensive to get a second. So closing the bod pod door, click it next, and it's going to again work through that assessment for the cylinder. And again, the comparison between nothing And then a known volume is going to make sure that this is fully calibrated. So the next piece is making sure the client is getting ready for the bod pod assessment. So if you feel comfortable getting into this spandex layer, that's the appropriate clothing. Do you want to just flip this around quick to see?
You gotta tell me if it's on.
That's a great question. I don't actually know if it is. Yep, there we go. Okay, so this is what the appropriate clothing would look like, where you'd have the person in spandex, swimwear kind of a thing. This in actual like street clothing is not going to be appropriate because again, that's trapping layers of air close to the skin, again, impacting the displacement of air that the individual would be having. You also want to make sure that they have a swim cap to compress the air that's in the hair of the individual. And so we're going to have that for Anna as she's going to get ready for the bod pod. Okay, so jewelry, if you can, take it off. Watch, if you can, take it off. Socks, basically you have to get down to the approved clothing layers. Yep.
Tuck into your swim.
Yep, and if you have like a nose ring, we've had some times where people have had newly pierced work where they can't take it out. If they just keep it in consistently, then you'll have consistent measures of changes in body composition, but it may be impacted for the accuracy of that specific measure. So like bring it over time, keeping it the same, it's fine, but that accuracy will be slightly. Okay, so you look like you're okay to go on it. So we're gonna have you then step up towards the scale. I'm gonna clear the scale first. So making sure the scale has nothing on it. I'll tell you when to go up. Okay, go ahead and step on up to the scale and then hold as steady as you possibly can for about 5 seconds.
You won't go down.
Okay, step up the scale. Maybe more like 8 seconds. All right, so we can then compare the weights that we have manual to the weight that is assessed here. We are going to open up the block door and remove the calibration cylinder. Okay. And then we'll ask subject into the bod pod door. So into the bod pod chamber. Go. Okay, so when you're in here, just breathe as normal as possible. Try to relax. Get try not to move around. And yes, if you are feeling like getting claustrophobic, there is a emergency release valve button that's like right by your side. So for those of you that are online, I don't know if you'll be able to see it, but there is an emergency cutoff switch. This does seal, and then the pressure is changed with the emergency cutoff switch right at the bottom there. We also have high-powered magnets around the edge to really lock in the seal. The gasket here is going to keep that air and be able to generate the pressure from behind the seat. There's kind of a membrane that will change that pressure that will then give us a volume that we can determine for Anna. So we're going to do that at least twice. Make sure that there is a consistent measure between those two. If it's inconsistent, we'll do a third measure, but each time it's about 45 seconds. So yeah, just breathe normal, try to limit your movement and relax as much as possible. Okay. Go. Okay. So for those of you that were interested, the weight from the manual compared to the weight that the bod pod gave us was about 1 pound off. But we actually kind of knew that because Dr. Karen and I were looking at the manual scale and we realized, oh, we actually have to like tweak it just a little bit because it's overestimating by just a smidge. So we didn't want to mess with that too much before, like 10 minutes before this assessment, but it's working. And again, we have an accurate measure of body mass from this. All right, so that's the first one. Doing okay? Awesome, sweet. We're gonna do one more. For sure, possibly a second.
Do you want to tell about the studies we've done with
Oh,
it?
yes, I'd love to. Actually, you probably know more about the studies that we've done recently. You want to talk about interest study that you're doing?
Yeah, so we had a master's student in the summer end. She did her thesis project comparing the bod pod with the ultrasound. I forget what the name was.
Can't remember what-
But there's a newer ultrasound technique that does basically the sites of a skin fold test, and it does ultrasound instead of the skin fold pinches. And what it does is it calculates the waves and the differentiation there. And so she was comparing if
So just
it was accurate to the bod pod in a healthy, active female population, because previous research has shown it was less accurate with a female active population. So we did that one, and then a few years ago we did body composition related to injuries in EMS personnel, and we were just seeing if there was any kind of relationship there, as well as quality of life.
Yeah, a couple of studies that I've done recently. I mean, I actually use data from courses that we are producing. So a exercise prescription course, the students bring clients in, test them over 7 weeks and try and improve their performance, improve their body composition. We've done that obviously in the class, and we pulled that data and analyzed it for a research project. I also did, as some of you doctorate programs know, I've done some research on dads that have been training for a century bike ride during the summer. And so we've done pre and post testing for that on cycloergometry and also body composition. So yeah, Anna had to do a third assessment because the first two were a little bit of inconsistency was found there. After the third, we found a best fit line for that. So it worked well. We can review that information if we next. And it's full printouts that you could have coming from the computer. And it will also estimate what your resting metabolic rate is. If you have had me in a nutrition class for the doctorate program, really in ex-phys classes, I love talking about resting metabolic rate because that's going to be that baseline energy expenditure that someone would have to consume to not lose any weight if they did nothing for a 24-hour period. So understanding that Anna's resting metabolic rate is around 1,380 kilocalories. That means she'd have to consume around 1,400 calories to not lose any weight if you just vegged in front of the TV all day. So you can also then estimate what the total daily energy expenditure is based on the activity level. Would you say that you're a pretty active individual? You're sportive. Yeah. So do you do a bunch of heavy exercise, like around 60 minutes per day or more? Yeah. Okay. So then you choose very active for the client, and then it will estimate out what the total energy expenditure would be for in this case. The estimate is 2857. Again, that's assuming that you're doing something every day, a moderate to vigorous intensity activity. This is an estimate. It's not necessarily specific to Anna for that total daily energy expenditure. So how I would use this information is I take the estimated resting metabolic rate and then have Anna measure the activity that she's doing throughout a couple of days, take an average of that, add that to the resting metabolic rate to then give you a closer specific energy intake that you should be hitting because here's how active you've been. So this is a good start to get you close, but if you wanted to make that a little more specific to the client, you want to really do like a self diary calculation on activity that you're doing throughout the day. That's basically that. Yeah, does anybody have any questions?
Dr. O, it's Wendy again. What were the inconsistencies that happened? I didn't quite catch that with the first two times that Anna was measured.
Yeah. So if the first two tests for the bod pod aren't exactly like right on, it'll ask you to do a third one just to make sure that there's a best fit line between those two. You get a trend when you have three, you can make a line when you have two. So if you look at statistically, if there is like a slight wiggle between the first and the second, but then the third one kind of hits like either closer to the second or closer to the first, you can see like, okay, yeah, there was a slight variation or difference, but we can get a better value for that individual with the third point. Sometimes the bod pod just works perfectly and you only need two. Some variables that are going to impact the bod pod's accuracy. If it is raining outside, that's a problem. Well, it has been a problem before. It can impact the calibration of this. And again, this is based off of the Archimedes principle. If you have changes in temperature or changes in pressure, then this is going to be impacted in its accuracy, because what we're looking at is pressure and volume being inversely related between two different areas. So if you have the pressure on one side that's being manipulated from the environment, then the volume can't be accurately assessed over time. So you want to have this in a room that's pretty climate controlled, so that the pressure that is being modified on one side of this chamber by the membrane that's behind the seat is going to give you an accurate volume every time. And sometimes there's like shifting in the movement of the client. Sometimes it's the breathing pattern. Sometimes, like I've had with large groups of classmates in here, they'll be like taking photos and putting stuff on like Instagram and Snapchat, and the person inside starts laughing. It doesn't become accurate because they're having massive changes in airflow. So the prompt to relax, to limit movement, to breathe normally, those are really important to hold steady, because otherwise each of those different assessments will give different values for the volume. So
Okay, thanks.
definitely. All right.
It's getting warm in here.
It is getting warm in here, I can tell, yeah. So, sweet, we did the bod pod. Good job. Hey, I don't know what your previous stuff was, but.
We can look here.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sure, my foot.
I followed you.
Sweet. Oh, yeah.
Did you get it?
I think I might have. Did I?
There you go.
I think no, it's solid.
No, it's done. So we want it to.
You want it to follow. Okay. I don't know if you wanted it to follow me or not. Okay, there we go. So it's gonna follow me on over. The next one that we're gonna do, because again, Anna was the one that we did bod pod with, and we've done height and weight with. We are going to do bioelectrical impedance. Did you fast for 2 hours? Did you go to the bathroom before? Yeah, pretty close. Okay, so with bioelectrical impedance, we're looking at the impedance or the speed of the electrical impulse, the low grade electrical impulse that goes between these electrode pads. The faster that it goes, the more water that the person will have in their body, the more water you have in the body. The idea is that there's more water in muscle and less water in fat. There's very little water actually in fat. So the faster that this goes, the less impedance there is to that electrical impulse, the greater the body composition is of muscle, less of fat. So what we'll do is over, since we're going to try and compare each of these different measures together. We'll use this Omron handheld device. This also could be with like an in-body or something similar to that. Where you're still looking at electrical impulses being passed through. We'll set you up as a guest. We'll start with you as a normal person. I'm assuming athletes to compare the normal versus the athlete one. You're at 5, 6.5, I believe. And then you were at, we'll do your bod pod. And then go way down through your age. 20. I'm gonna be 20. Gonna be 20, right? Perfect.
Are you using the same one Denise and I used?
Sure.
But
Oh, no, the age just starts off at 40 all the time. Like every time it's at 40. It's like a middle-aged person, you know. So okay, so I set this up with all the information specific to Anna. What she's going to do is you're going to grab onto these two pads and then you're going to hit start. And then hold on to that. There'll be like a little flashing light that then will start to propagate from low, normal to high, and then it'll give you your body fat percentage, and then it'll also give you your BMI. So if you want to just do that, I'll just stand over here so that you can see how it started with it. Yep.
Now, does it matter how far away she holds it, or can she?
For the most part, yeah, as long as you just have it in front of you, that's going to be all right. Okay, perfect. So the normal classification that you had was a 16.6% body fat. You should probably write down the one that you had here. I think it was 13.3 is what I saw from the bod pod. So bod pod was 13.3. We got 16.6 as the normal classification for the individual with BIA, 13.3%. And then this was 16.6% with a BMI of 21.5. So again, different numbers. BMI 21.5 does not measure this percentages at all. That's kilograms over meters squared. So they're completely different. They are assessing the body, but not looking at body. Each one is not body position. BIA and bod pod are. So then we'll start the next one. We're gonna make you an athlete this time. Automatically, it's pretty awesome. You just decide you're an athlete on here, you're an athlete. So there we go. You're gonna be 5'6". Go back to 19. So here's kind of what it's looking like. I don't know if you can see that very well, but you just hit set for each of these. We have her set up as an athlete who is 5'6.5", and go ahead and hold on to that just like you did last time. And then start. And just like last time, we'll have it propagate through those measures. Okay. And so this one is for an athlete. We're at 16.9 for that body fat percentage. So if you're a non-athlete compared to an athlete, it's assuming the water is placed in a different spot. One is assuming that there's more interstitial fluid, the other that there's more water in the muscle. So again, 0.3% difference between the two for Anna, but a 6 or 3% difference between body composition between bod and BIA at the moment. Okay. Any questions on this? BIA is fine, but you have to make sure that you're having a correct pre-assessment setup in that protocol. So make sure that you don't have any excess water. So like sweating, peeing, if you're sick, if you took a shower recently, like within this time frame, if you drank a bunch of water, if you're a female and you're menstruating in a different cycle, you have that here as well. So I don't personally like this as much for accuracy, but again, if we're looking at this over time and we're keeping everything very consistent, this can be utilized well. But I would more or less put it in line with all of the other assessments and just compare them. All right, the next one, circumference measure. This one is going to be pretty easy to do. It's pretty inexpensive. You have to just buy a tape that's flexible. What you do is you take measures in centimeters, and the NIDA manual or ACSM or a bunch of different places will give you sites to measure. So you can do like 7 site or 10 sites. What we're going to do today is we're just going to do the measures that are specific to a female. And so that's on this board over here. You can see this is the upper ab, so for the waist, the hip, and then the neck. So we're going to take those 3 measures on and then record those in centimeters. So the first one is going to be around the neck. You want it to be a slight horizontal measure. You don't want to obviously choke the person, so having a light enough tension on this that you're up against the skin, but not like compressing that skin too much. So we are at 30.9. Okay, so that's going to be the first one. You take multiple measures at each site typically, but you work from top to bottom. So the next one is going to be the upper ab or the waist. That's the narrowest part of the body. And one thing I do want to highlight, I'm standing to the side of the client. As we get down to like the hip, if I'm not on the side, my hand placement gets really awkward. So making sure that you're standing off to the side when you're measuring each of these, just for professionalism and making the person feel confident and comfortable. So when we start getting into the torso of the individual, I typically do kind of like that. Jump rope movement. And we want to make sure that it is as horizontal parallel to the ground as possible. And I didn't twist it yet. So. Jump rope again.
So you can see it doesn't always go as planned.
It does not always go. So again, you don't want to pull too much, but you're at 66.5.
We're just doing one
Yep.
today, but typically you would do 3 and
Yep.
average it out.
Exactly, yep. And then we're gonna do the hip, and the hip is gonna be the widest part, the hip buttocks region. If you wanted to be the most accurate, you could have the person get down, if they did the pod get down to that, but. You know, I will just do it for ease around the widest portion, and again, making sure that you're standing up to the side. You could. Have a little bit more tension on this in this
It's not-
case. Oh, sorry, your your sweatshirt's also. on, so that's fine. Yeah. So we're at 91.5. Okay, so then you take this information that Dr. Carrot just put up here, and it's not on yet. See if we can do this. No, not gonna follow me. There we go. Okay. I walked too fast. Okay, let's try that again. Yes. There we go. All right, so you use this equation. Again, taking the upper end of waist plus the hip, subtract the neck, and you would take the log of that. The log is a logarithmic function. You can do that on your phone by just turning your phone horizontal, and they'll give you a whole bunch of extra pieces to calculate. You just use the log 10 button after you've done this equation first. You multiply that by -0.35. Add 0.221. And then multiply that by. Sorry, multiply this here first. You want to do it as well? We can move on to the skin fold. Yeah, you can do the math. All right, so the other piece is the. We'll move over this way. I think it's gonna follow me. Nope, it's not. Okay. Follow me again. Sorry, I have to take it off and then it forgets who its parent is. There we go. It's like a little duckling, you know. It's got to follow its daddy around. Okay, here we go. All right, so here's the equation for females for the skin fold. So the skin fold is going to be, if you're using a Lang caliper, which is a really high-powered one, it's really accurate. It's about $350. It's metal, it's awesome. But you can also buy a $5 one off of Amazon that's plastic and has a normal strength. So accuracy is going to be obviously better with a more heavy-duty one. So what we're going to do is we're going to measure the triceps, the suprailiac, and the thigh on Anna. So are you wearing a t-shirt? Okay, so yeah, I'll just do the tricep for you. So tricep location is going to be halfway between elbow and the shoulder, and it's going to be in the mid belly of the tricep. So let's take that measure here. So I typically do like both hands, and then go ahead and flex. Okay, having the person flex is going to separate that muscle from the subcutaneous fat, and then we're going to measure this below the pinch, so I'm not compressing that subcutaneous fat too much. I'm going to release the caliper and release the pinch, and then I'm going to write down the number for the triceps, which was 14. The doctor has the good mark. That's okay. All right. Same thing with hey, how's it going? Sorry, we just had another faculty member tell me it's awesome. So like the circumference, you do 3 measures at each site, working your way through one at a time, going through 3 cycles. for the purposes of our video, we're only gonna do one at each site. So, triceps, suprailiac is the next one. So the suprailiac is gonna be kind of right at that ASIS in a 45-degree angle. We're gonna take that pinch and measure that. So, yeah, yep. Just, yep, right there. Yep, perfect. So like, I'm gonna find that spot, go at a 45-degree angle, measure right below the pinch. So 7, release the caliper first, and then release the pinch. Okay. And then the thigh is the last one. This one's a little bit difficult, especially if you're wearing pants. That's fine. You can still do it. What I'll do is, I don't know if you can see this. My camera's not following me well. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to measure the thickness of this as like a 2-ply piece. And then I'll subtract that off. So that is, because it's really thin, it's 1 millimeter, which is great. So then I'm going to have you go halfway in between the kneecap and kind of that bend in the hip. And okay, can I have you flex? Okay. Sorry, this one kind of hurts. It kind of hurt. Yeah. So then I'm going to subtract 1, so you're at 29. So I'm going to be at 28 for that because again we had that extra layer of clothing. So 28 millimeters, and then what we do is we add up these 3, put that here and here in this equation. Lots of zeros, right? So if you drop a 0, it's going to have a huge impact on body fat percentage, because body density is then going to go into this equation. And if this is off by just a little bit, then body fat percentage is going to be off quite a bit. That being said, we've got all the measures now that we can use for body fat percentage. We use the same equation, the Siri equation, for determining that body fat percentage for females or for males. After we've done these 2 equations, we've got body density. After we've done the circumference measures, we've got body density. Both of those are going to go into this equation, and we can then calculate out what that body fat percentage is. And so I know is it not showing up, right?
It wasn't great.
That's it. So it's a lot of math. If you hate math,
I was gonna say.
it's like following you. Yeah, it's got the wrong. Should be good now. Like just scoot this around. So yeah. So any questions related to body composition when it comes to BIA, circumference, skin fold? Any questions around BMI? BMI is still a valid measure. It's actually extremely reliable, and it doesn't change unless your weight or your height changes. So when people say like it's not a reliable measure, it is. It's actually extremely reliable, but it's maybe not a valid measure for body composition because it's not assessing composition. It's just assessing the ratio of weight to height. And I know it sounds like a nuanced piece, but it's actually kind of a big deal. So, yeah, that's basically that. We got a couple of other people in here that want to run through some of the other assessments and find out what their data is. Does anybody have any questions online for me?
No, that was super interesting and helpful, especially to see like all the equations. We still got to do that math, right? I'm sure there's software and Excel sheets you could put together, but cool to see how they compare. Thank you.
Yeah, and you bring up a really good point too. There are way more equations that you could use for each of these. So whatever that equation is, you have to do their protocol for collecting the data. Some of them, like we use a 3-site equation for honest data. You can do 7-site, you can do 9-site. There are lots of different sites for skin fold as an example that you could do. You just have to make sure that you're doing each of those pieces appropriately. And I didn't want to run through all of those because we have limited time, but there are number of sites, number of equations, even a couple of other equations to determine body composition from that density that you could use. So yeah, just kind of diving into the literature, getting a really good manual like the ACSM guidelines manual. I have it upstairs. I was meaning to bring it down and I forgot. That's a really good manual because it will walk you through all these different body composition assessments that you could do. Gives you the equations that you can then utilize for your client or for yourself. So
That needs to be centimeters for height, right? Not inches. That's where I
Yeah.
got up.
I'm sorry, yeah.
No, you're good.
So yeah,
Problem solving at its best.
isn't that great? Yeah, and the best part is you're like, that number doesn't look right.
Yes, that could
That
happen.
happens a lot. So if you look at the number and it's like, yeah, that number is weird. What's going on here? Problem solving, math, it's just a constant battle. But
Well, see, it was telling me she had a 60%.
yeah, that's
Yeah, so, yeah.
yeah, so you could put these into, like Wendy said, I believe it was Wendy, I'm not looking at the screen. You could put this into like a spreadsheet and just pump the numbers in. And it'll give you your values, but
Yeah, that's better. So 21%.
21%, yeah, so from circumference was 21%, so you can see again compared to, can't see because you're not looking at the right screen. Here, so if you look here, we've got bod pod at 13.3, we've got BIA at 16.7-ish, somewhere around there. We've got circumference at 21.4%, so there is variation in this. They're all estimates. The most accurate one is the one that you can't recover from being dissected. Like you can't get as accurate as a dissection, but yeah, we don't own, well, I mean, legally, we probably don't own a dissection. I bet we could do it if we really had to. So morbid, so sorry. But yeah, these are all comparing that estimate to what a true like dissection comparison of fat versus not fat would be. Yeah.
Perfect.
Hope you guys can use this in your courses, in your daily life, in your field that you're in. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.